Welcome to Encouraging Wellness, where we shed light on the plethora of holistic healing and wellness methods so you can give yourself the power to ask why and become bigger than the condition you are dealing with or the illness you are currently fighting. Join Pamela Wirth as she sits down with doctors, medical experts, healthcare practitioners, and those with unique healing stories to dissect groundbreaking practices that combine traditional Western medicine with alternative modalities. Hear conversations that empower you to go beyond hurtful stigmas, outdated practices, and unnecessary labels, guiding you towards a healthier and happier you. Here, we highlight your true worth and help unleash your inner courage. Now your host, Pamela.
Hi, this is Pamela with the Encouraging Wellness podcast and founder of Hello Health. And today I have Hannah, who is a physician assistant, as well as she has a company called Healthi with Hannah. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, Pam. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you too. So tell us a little bit about your background and your journey in health and wellness.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a PA, physician assistant, like you mentioned. And, not to take you too far back, but I always knew I wanted to work in medicine. There's something so cool about the science to me and to be able to use that to help people. But as you're going through, PA school and you go through all these different rotations. So you're working in emergency medicine, you're working in labor and delivery, pediatrics, and of course, primary care. You kind of see where you are meant to provide your skills. And while working in places like the ER can be so exciting, you also see the other end of healthcare. So, I really saw that there was an issue with our healthcare system when I was working in the ER, because there's a lot of prescriptions and, needed surgeries that are absolutely important for people. But there's not a lot of focus on preventive care and helping people with chronic diseases. It's a lot of the acute sickness focus. So I knew I wanted to work in something that had a little bit more of a preventive care aspect. And after graduating, I did a 2-year integrative medicine fellowship. And I just fell in love. Like, eyes were open. I worked with a really incredible local female physician, and she just kind of helped me view medicine differently. And instead of always, you come in with the patient and maybe write them a prescription, you spend a few minutes with them. We really tried to see what else you can do, what aspects of their lifestyle you can change. And that is where my company kind of developed based on those foundations. And then as I moved into some of the longevity aspects as well, I incorporated them all into one. So that's kind of how I got to be here.
That's really cool. So what is a fellowship in integrative medicine? What does that really mean?
Yeah. So for me, it was working one-on-one. She had a single practice, so she was the only provider there. And it was me working with her one-on-one all day, being able to see exactly how she treated her clients. And then, interpreting the scans, the lab work in her eye, rather than the traditional, or it's called, conventional view that I had been trained in. So it's that intense one-on-one, being able to learn in that way is what the fellowship was. And then for that amount of time, which was really important for my learning.
That's really cool. So in terms of Healthi with Hannah, what types of services do you offer?
Yeah, so Healthi with Hannah kind of developed, in addition to what I already said. My husband, so he has a strong family history of cancer, something no one, loves to hear. And one of these tests I was running on him, he had a marker that popped up that said his cell division was increased. And that can mean increased risk for tumors, an active tumor. So of course, we're freaking out. We're wanting to get him an MRI. We're wanting to keep going on this blood test journey and seeing what's going on. But there was nothing out there. And he's saying, Hannah, can I just go get an MRI? And at the time, I'm like, no, you can't just go get an MRI. You have to be sick or have symptoms. And we could find a certain test from one specialty and a certain test from another specialist, but it wasn't all in one. And so that's how I develop my offerings from my experience with him, where now it can be all in one. And I can say, for my own family, like this is what I actually think is comprehensive and preventive to really feel confident with your health. So services, I mentioned a couple already. I offer MRI services, which we just had done Friday. It was a really cool experience. They have you watching TV during it now. It's so interesting.
It's not the pounding that it used to be.
Okay, there's a little pounding, but they give you these huge headphones and like a weighted blanket.
Okay.
And then, they have Netflix above your head. So it was easy peasy experience. And I'm really excited to share that with my clients. And then just, bringing it back to the basics. So what most people think about as their annual lab work, I would say I do that on steroids, if you will. So I'm really diving deep into things like cholesterol panels, inflammation, which is so important for your aging process, oxidation, thyroid panels. But then I go into a little bit of the newer testing, which is really exciting. So we have toxin panels to see what your toxic burden is. We have gut health panels. Leaky gut is one of those hot terms now when people just have vague gut symptoms. And now you can actually test for it. So that's impressive. And then hormones everyone wants to know their hormone status. And it is interesting because it tells us, sleep, sex drive, all kinds of stress, all kinds of different things can be deduced from your hormone panels. And I would say that's probably my most popular offering right now is the hormone panels. And then I also do organic acid testing. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Yeah. So organic acid testing is kind of nutrition based, and it's how your body is using and metabolizing what you're giving it. So that also gives us a lot of good information on your gut health, maybe inflammation in your brain. And it's popular with kids actually in pediatrics right now.
Wow. So, in terms of if someone comes to you, the protocol would be first to run a bunch of blood work. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So customized to everyone. And it's funny you say that because I started out with kind of set panels and not one person fit into my little boxes I had developed, which is so true. So for each person, yes, I start with specific labs to them, whether it's the hormones, the guts, or whether we dive into more of the anti-aging tests. And then from there, it's a lot of lifestyle. So using the lab test, of course, but then we're deep diving into their nutrition, their exercise, their sleep, and how we can get this all synced up into one.
Very cool. As you're kind of going through this, what do you suggest when it comes to nutrition? Everyone's got, opinions on this, it seems like, but
Yes, that is such a good point. So my biggest and my first suggestion to everyone is to eat real food, which is, it sounds so simple, but if you really go throughout your week and you're not eating stuff from a bag, you're not eating or drinking sodas or sugary snacks, you will really start to improve your health. And eating that way will obviously give you fruits, it gives you vegetables, it gives you whole proteins. And that becomes an anti-inflammatory diet for most people. And unfortunately, for most Americans, it's not where they're at right now. So just switching to eating real foods is a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Is there anything that you're seeing more than others in terms of like certain chronic illnesses or any, I don't want to call them trends, but is something kind of popping up than it has been over the past, years that you've been doing this?
So I would say something that's been there's two things. So the first thing that's been pretty prevalent is kind of the 40s and up crowd. They are being told by their conventional provider to start cholesterol medications, and they're a little hesitant now. So that's one trend I'm seeing is people don't want to go straight to the prescription. They're almost a little, I don't want to say non-trusting, but they are wanting to go out there and do their own research before they take something. And I really respect that. And it's good because that allows our testing. So I mentioned the advanced lipid panel going through crazy cholesterol numbers. It lets us pinpoint if they really do need it. And I will say I haven't had one client actually need a statin yet. And I'm not saying they're never indicated, absolutely they are in some people, but that's a trend I'm seeing.
So you're finding that folks through nutrition can really lower those numbers.
Yeah. And it can even be as little as losing, 5, 10 pounds.
Mhm.
As you start walking during the day, maybe you do need a little supplement support, but it's an all natural supplement. And so those are the kind of things that people want and what I'm seeing a lot more.
Well, that's pretty neat. In terms of a natural supplement with, someone that's concerned about cholesterol, what would that look like?
Yeah. So of course, it's good to look at your levels, but a good one is always red yeast rice. So
Oh,
red yeast rice is kind of chemically similar to a statin medication, and that has worked. It works for almost everyone to lower their levels, and your dose is going to depend on what your levels are. But red yeast rice, and then also niacin. That's
mm,
another natural supplement, and those work pretty well for cholesterol levels.
that's neat. Do you have any go-tos that you love for just supplementation in general, like a handful of things that are kind of a no-brainer?
Yes. So I used to be the one who said, I don't take anything. But as I, learn and learn, and no one's diet's perfect. So I take three things right now. So I take vitamin D. Almost everyone is deficient in vitamin D. A lot of people need to take it with K2 as well. Even, I live in Florida, and the physician I work with said, even if you're outside, no sunscreen during the hottest part of the day, you're still not going to get enough vitamin D.
Yeah.
So I take vitamin D, and then I take just a multivitamin from Thorne.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I take is beef liver.
Really?
Yes. So beef liver, that's everyone's reaction, but it is one of the best and the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. And it's really good for anti-aging.
Huh. Well, you learn
Yeah.
something new every day.
Yes. Yeah. And I know I'm not going to be eating liver. So I'm taking the supplement.
So for folks where they're thinking, I probably should start watching, anti-aging. What does that mean, in terms of lifestyle or blood work or certain things that is there a certain time in their lives that they should start to think about anti-aging, or is it more anti-inflammatory and sooner the better, or what does that kind of mean for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a good question. And asking me, I would say the sooner the better. So I am testing my levels now to see how fast I'm aging, my biological age, my telomere length, because the more time, the better you have to adjust things, in my opinion. But I would say around 40 is a great time to really dive into the level up interventions. So
Mhm.
I would say the basic level, like you were mentioning, is the healthy eating, is the sleeping well. That's so important. Is the stress management, even meditation, just quiet sitting for 5 minutes a day can make a huge difference to your DNA. But then that level up I was talking about, that's things like getting an NAD drip, maybe looking at some supplements that help really regulate your blood sugar, hormone replacement therapy with a really good provider who does bioidentical hormones, who really is well versed there and knows what they're doing. Even diving into the stem cell arena, I see some of my longevity type clients really interested in that side. But there's, like I mentioned, a lot more accessible things that everyone can do, and the sooner the better.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a clinic here that does things like hyperbaric chamber and red light therapy.
Yeah,
Do you prescribe to any of that type of behavior in addition to what you're doing, or?
I love
Yeah.
it. Yes, but there's so much info out there, and it's really confusing for people to decipher it on their own. So I make sure I'm aligned with really, prestigious medical societies that give really good information there. So one of those is A4M, which is the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, long name. But they I do a lot of trainings through them, and they do hyperbaric training often. And I recently took this, and it was just incredible, the knowledge. And yes, so I definitely prescribe to that, and we're putting one in our clinic here.
Nice.
And NAD drips, I think, are important as well. We have an infrared sauna in our house, a cold plunge as well. So yes, but you don't need all that, right? Like you can hit a hot yoga session once a week and get a lot of that detox benefits. You can hop in a cold bath at your home, but those things really help restart the mitochondria in your cells, like your powerhouses, and help clear the junk.
Yeah, I mean, detox is a huge thing, especially in
Yeah.
children. Do you have any suggestions? And do do you work with kids too to kind of help them detox? Because they're coming into contact with so much junk, and it's really impacting a lot of
Yeah.
their expression of mood and everything else.
That is so true. And, I don't work in my clinic with kids, but having a kid and he's a eczema, what they call little allergy baby,
Mm.
just personal experience there. And then, of course, in my training through grad school there, I really think it's important what you're feeding them at home. And a lot of these kids who are diagnosed with maybe a learning disability or overactive activity, they could benefit from some tweaks in their nutrition, some of them. I'm not saying it's a cure-all for everyone, but that's always what I encourage parents to do. Make sure, when possible, they're eating real foods,
Mhm.
cut the sugars a little bit when you can. And then I think it's also important, a good multivitamin for them, because their diet's not going to be perfect, of course, either. And probiotics for the little ones, because that will protect their gut, in turn protecting the rest of them.
Yeah, for sure. So you had mentioned something about epigenetics. What does that mean?
Yes, epigenetics is my favorite topic. So, epigenetics is just how your lifestyle is impacting your DNA. There are now these tests that are measuring this. And one of the most famous and most popular is Cologuard. Are you familiar with Cologuard
Yep.
tests?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's a cancer, very mainstream now, colon cancer prevention test, and they use methylation markers on a few different genes there. But that's epigenetics. So that's epigenetic testing. And it's where you're able to see if your diet, if your lifestyle is kind of covering up good genes or covering up bad genes.
Uh-huh.
And then you test and you see where you're at with that. It's like your methylation status. And the coolest part is, well, two things. One is this is all lifestyle modified. So the way you really turn back the clock, if you will, are through foods, are through meditation, through stress management. You don't have to go taking crazy prescriptions to do
Yeah.
so.
So, and then talk to me a little bit about methylated vitamins. Like there's, when you're buying supplements and vitamins, you can
Yeah.
see on the back of it whether it's methylated or not. And it's my understanding that that's generally good for just about everybody. And
Yeah. So
non-methylated is bad for about half the population. But talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you're familiar with MTHFR genes and testing.
Mhm.
And that was a test that we ran in our practice, but I had never even heard of before then. So I don't think it's a really conventional thing. But once we know that someone or, can suspect that someone might have an issue with that methylation or anywhere in their methylation cycle, then they would benefit from methylated vitamins, like you were talking about. And those methylated vitamins are common with the B supplements like B12, folate. And taking that really helps because when B vitamins are broken down, part of that can be broken down into a chemical that is bad for our system, toxic for our system when they're not methylated. So that's really the importance of methylated vitamins. It's great if you can check, but if you're taking supplements, they're not doing it for you. It wouldn't hurt you to try a methylated version, even if you can't get that specific test done. That was a
Yeah,
really good question.
yeah. I think the thing that kind of has boggled my mind too is all the folic acid they pump in you when you're pregnant. I'm not necessarily sure that is a great idea for folks with the gene. And so hopefully that becomes a little bit more commonplace to test for that when folks are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. But
Right. Yeah, that's a really important concept too, because a lot of these vitamins are a U-shaped curve. When it's too low or too high, it's
Mhm.
not good for you. And even the same with vitamin D, they've found in studies that when it's too high, you're not getting more benefit from it. So it is a delicate balance. And that's why people need to be cautious when they're just taking supplements from the internet without a practitioner.
Yeah, no, that's super. So if folks want to work with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, TikTok's actually where I find most of my clients, funny enough. And it just goes back to people looking for those answers that they're not getting. But of course, email always works for me. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I'm on all the things. But I would love to chat with you. And I always talk to people, no charge, just to get where they're at and make sure we're a good fit and really explain what it is I do. But being on platforms like this is so helpful because it's a lot to explain and it
is
can't
a
all
lot
be
to
done in a
explain.
couple sentences. Yeah.
And then do you work with folks that are not just in Florida? Can you work with people remotely as well?
Yeah. A lot of my clients are remote, and most of my testing options that I've been able to find are at home kits, which makes it so easy for people. So I can just ship you the kit to your house, and it's usually just a quick self collection. Maybe it's a hair sample, a urine sample, or a little finger prick. And it's been a really convenient process for my clients.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. We really appreciate having you on today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Have a good day.
You too.
That's it for this episode of Encouraging Wellness. We hope this serves as an eye-opener to you on new ways to approach your health and wellness. By learning both unique and the best alternative wellness and healing methods, you can live your best life. Listen to more of our episodes at www.hello.health. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let us work towards unlocking you and your family's best self. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.